Chapter 3. You, he said, motioning to her, then turning with no further instruction. She recognized a man who expected to be obeyed, whether or not he had done anything to deserve it. Silver followed. As he walked away from the gathered soldiers, he led her behind a nearby stack of sealed crates stamped with quarantine marks, where their voices would be at least partially muffled. The nearest flood warden had the good sense to look the other way. Silver stopped, because he'd stopped. Up close, his uniform marked him as a superior, but his bearing showed the wear of earnest effort. His coat, though well-maintained, bore the markings of chalk and sweat stains beneath his arms. Despite the lines of fatigue at the corners of his eyes, he held his hands behind his back, like this were routine inspection. "How did you see that?" Silver kept her posture loose, and her voice level. The chalk arc had only drifted a hair if you looked at the runework on either side. "That's not what I asked." "No," she agreed. The officer's head tilted a fraction. "Answer." Silver exhaled slowly. The man was doing his best. She could deflect, or lie, but something about his bearing hinted that he was doing his best to prevent catastrophe for more than medals. "I was Aegis," she said. 103. She prepared herself for him to digest what that meant. "You were in the 103, he said, incredulously. "The brains that design all the runework these fops copy. Sirona bless them." "And now you're a greycoat," the officer said. "I'm a reclaimer," Silver replied. "Sent from Greyhaven so that some of those you collar might survive. I usually design and maintain the wards there. It's not the same scale as an Aegis cordon, but we make a difference. Things were stable there, but we were short-handed in the relief efforts. I was sent with my team to help." She met his eyes and didn't blink. He held her eyes, and she felt the turn from, "Could you be useful?" to, "Who are you, really? Why were you discharged?" He asked. Each member of that division was valuable, an irreplaceable, snobby and intolerable group of academics, dressed up as soldiers, who were only tolerated because their work saved thousands of lives. The pay was good, and they were kept off the front lines, so his suspicion was fair, even if she didn't want to talk about it. Someone as young as her did not usually end up in grey. "I'm sure you can pull the records," she said calmly. The officer's jaw tightened. "You think I won't?" "It's out of my control." She kept her tone even. "Right now, it doesn't change what I saw, or the fact that I need to get back to my team so we can burn more children to give them a chance to survive." He held the silence for several moments, as if waiting for guilt to show up on her face. When it didn't, he shifted. "You overstepped," he said. Silver didn't blink. "I did not. I never touched their work. I asked if he wanted a lamp before they cut a line into stone." The officer grunted. The etiquette surrounding runework followed the chain of command. The result, good or bad, of the runes belonged to the overseeing runesmith. Things got prickly if someone made a change to the chalk lines without being asked to. "I don't really care where you came from. The spread of this cog-fucking outbreak hasn't followed any of the patterns. I'll not pass over a gold coin on the ground, regardless of who dropped it." Silver almost laughed, knowing this was the closest thing she'd get to a request. "Your runesmiths are right there," she said. "They are tired," he replied. "They are few." A pause. "And some of them are not as competent as their posture suggests." She folded her arms. "I'm not a runesmith anymore." "But you saw an error." He didn't. "I did." Silver let the silence do its work. She didn't want him to think she was eager. The truth was that she wasn't. She was exhausted, down to her marrow. The only thing keeping her upright was the knowledge of what was happening inside Wharf 9. "I'm done for the night," she said. "My team's done. We've been on burn detail since dawn. I need to go back to camp. We all need sleep." The officer stepped half a pace closer, asserting that she hadn't yet been dismissed. "My ward crews can't hold out undermanned." "That's your problem," Silver said, and felt the bluntness of it even as she spoke. She forced her tone to calm. "And you're not the only one short-handed." His expression hardened. "I don't have time to negotiate with you. Just tell me what you want." She didn't raise her voice. If you take me, Silver said, the reclaimers lose a medic line. We're not spare parts you can take without consequence. Those people inside the cordon still need water and bandages and hands willing to help when someone screams and tries to escape before their sores close. His irritation melted into understanding. A capable runesmith is more valuable than a regular soldier, he said. Silver nodded. Finally, he said, I'll make sure your work is covered. Silver kept her face neutral. How? A soldier, he said, in a clipped tone, to stand where you stood. Burn detail, line support, crowd control. Whatever you greycoats are doing. His tone made it clear he considered it strange that he would trade an Aegis regular for a reclaimer, but he was making it. Anyway, a soldier for me, and 2 more for my team, she said. Bram and Kieran stay with me. I need my team. The officer's head tipped, the smallest sign of surprise. You negotiate. I trust my people. Without that, I can't accomplish what you are asking of me, Silver said. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, 2 kinds of stubborn. Then the officer blinked first, if barely. 3 soldiers then. You'll report to the ward crews, he said. I'll need a support team, Silver said. We can't build wards with 3 people. The officer's jaw tightened again. Fine. You'll have support. Silver nodded once, as if this were the obvious outcome. About your discharge, he said quietly. If you find something you don't like, Silver interrupted, still calm, you'll do what you think you have to do. But you'll still need the ward line to hold until then. The officer studied her for a long moment, as if he were trying to decide if she were making a threat or a promise. When he finally spoke, his tone held something like professional acknowledgement. I am Major Lionel Barton, at your service, he said, saluting her. My name is Silver Kren, apparently now at yours, she said, returning the gesture. I'm going back to my team to let them know. We will report back to you in the morning. I won't craft runes while I'm exhausted. Silver smiled and turned to leave. Wait, he said. Silver looked over her shoulder, pausing. Before you go, he said, you'll need papers. Barton led her to the field desk the Aegis had set up at the center of the mobile work camp. 2 trestle tables sat under a canvas awning, weighted at the corners with sandbags so the bay winds couldn't take it. Lanterns burned low beneath the tarp, their light kept tight on paper and hands. A pair of soldiers stood guard in their plague gear, staring down anyone that approached from the quarantine district, menacingly. The thin line between fear and compliance was tested every time someone passed. A clerk was already there, ink-stained fingers moving fast across their ledgers. Barton spoke in the same clipped tone, brandishing bureaucracy like another kind of weapon. Draft a writ, he said. Ward Maintenance Authority. 3 names. Compensation at the contractor rate. Full clearance to traverse quarantine districts, the officer continued. Integrity, repairs, stability, access to placement maps and schedules. The clerk slid a sheet forward for Barton's review. He read it, then tapped a line with a gloved finger. Add conditional language, he said. Revocable at command's discretion. The clerk wrote without comment. Silver leaned in just enough to read over the edge of the lantern light. Permission, conditional and revocable, subject to review, obedience to Aegis quarantine restrictions. Termination without appeal, if they did anything to compromise operational integrity. A doorway and a trap in every sentence. Barton took a narrow stamp from a wooden case and pressed it into a pad of sealing wax. The mark left behind was crisp, even in dim light. He signed beneath it with a short, practiced stroke, then slid the paper toward Silver. You don't need to carry it, he said. You can pick up badges at the Aegis office at the base of the spire, so you won't be stopped as you work. Silver's eyes stayed on the seal. And my team's pay? The officer's gaze narrowed as it flicked up toward her. All 3, he said. Contractor rate. Comparable rank. It's in the agreement? Silver asked, still calm. One of the guards near the table stepped forward, clearly chagrined by her familiar tone, with the Major. A raised hand from Barton stopped him, as something like bemusement touched his stillness. He nodded to the clerk. He added the line without looking up. Silver finally smiled as she nodded. When a deal was made with the Aegis, paper was the thin barrier that could shield her from the indifference of the machine. Silver inclined her head and stepped back out toward the cordon, already feeling the weight of the trade settling onto her shoulders. She traded the branding iron for chisel and chalk. She would be doing real work again, not maintaining clarity wards at the reclaimer camp within the spire. The suffocating influence inside the spire was a dull opponent. Now she would be erecting defenses that separated life and death. She would be working under pressure with all the resources she needed. But time. Failure meant being scapegoated as the greycoat who had betrayed the Aegis, saving Barton the blame. The implications should have terrified her. But I'll be returned to my work. My real work. The fate of Harbor's Edge, at least to an extent, would rest on her shoulders. She couldn't be more excited.